the banking sector is one of the biggest lender as a total to the microfinance industry. So so Zafar Saab was kind enough to agree immediately, but because of Ramadan, we decided that we should hold it after Eid. So we just a few requests. We are keeping everyone muted because the agenda is such that we will have a 20 to 25-minute presentation by Zafar Saab. This will be followed by a question and answer session. We request that each one of you use chat box to put your questions, and we will then direct it to Zafar Saab to respond to it. And then once the QA is closed, then the PM and Chair Amir Khan Saab will close the session with what we are going to do going forward also as the challenge also unfolds. So over to you, Zafar Saab.
जी बहुत शुक्रिया मोहसिन. I was also, to tell you the truth, was very excited about this initiative of Mohsin and PNM. With that, let me just start with some kind of preamble before I delve into the presentation as such. Obviously I'm not an expert on the geopolitics, but whatever I understand, I'll share it with you, and what could be the implications of that on Pakistan. We did some analysis as an industry. We got some insight from the government as well and the regulator, which I think is a good idea to share with all of you. We also decided to follow some kind of regime for ourselves as banks, and we would also suggest that perhaps PNM would like to follow the similar. Particularly, in my very humble assessment, I think the US misread the situation of Iran. They were thinking that the moment they'll get rid of the, top leadership, top 50 people, there will be a regime change. And that's actually a result of a couple of things. One is the fact that people who were advising US were biased, and they had blinkers on to actually do the real assessment of the situation, and which turned out to be totally incorrect. Secondly, they completely missed out on the fact that even genuinely, if they were trying to prevent Iran from enriching uranium, they missed out on the fact that Iran has a control over Strait of Hormuz and obviously the other trade channels indirectly through Houthis, and the choking possibly there because the infrastructure is not as robust as it's on this side of the transportation is. And that's the real atom bomb it turned out to be. The result is that there are some permanent new normals, both on the economic front as well as on the diplomatic side. On the diplomatic side, and these are some unintended consequences of premature war exerted on Iran. On the diplomatic front, the friends and foe will change. In my opinion, there will be a shift in the power center. There will be more pronounced power centers like Pakistan and perhaps Iran as well, depending on how the settlement will arrive at eventually. I will not be surprised that Iran will emerge as another power center in this region other than Pakistan. The friends also, people who have military power and has the ability to support and work with the others, like Pakistan with Saudi Arabia, would also be someone in demand. Economically, there will be a permanent increase in cost of doing business, in my opinion, because of the talk that has been happening about possible, taxes on the trade side, insurance costs going up, etc., etc. But I also see some of the markets opening up like Iran for Pakistan for that matter. Um, Iran surely has an upper hand at this point in time because of because they have nothing to lose, to tell you the truth. They have already destroyed Iran so much. The reportedly two-thirds of Tehran is gone. I think it's they are just they have nothing to lose as such, and they have an upper hand to now ask for the resolution of this war quickly. And in my opinion, until Iran is brought into the mainstream, I think this resolution, a permanent resolution, cannot be arrived at. Until they will brought into the mainstream, which means that this market will open up for everybody and then everybody will be a beneficiary in the medium term, not in the short term. This will be the only way out to settle the Iran issue. Pakistan is surely outperformed the supposedly or ostensibly the regional leader, which is India, by far, and this story seems to be remaining there for a while. Second slide. Next slide. While we are worried about the West Asia crisis, there is another crisis which is happening on our eastern border, which is Iran, which is Afghanistan-Pakistan conflict as well. A quick and permanent resolution on that side also is very critical. There are lots of open-ended items there which needed to be boxed in. It seems like that China has come through, and some kind of resolution will be arrived on that side of the border of Pakistan as well. Obviously, the most talked about conflict tension is in Iran and Israel, as they call it. But factually speaking, it's, to my mind, is not Israel anymore. It's US and Iran, and it has engulfed the entire globe now. Iran has very smartly fought this war, other than the fact that US misread Iran's strength of choking the trade routes and the regime change. They also did not realize that Iran will start attacking the regions, and especially the ones where US has its bases, and engulf them in the entire process. The result is that Europe by default has gotten embroiled into this whole equation, because Europe was completely dependent on, particularly on gas from this side of the world. And as I said, that US misread the whole thing. The trade routes will become choked, and that's the real atom bomb to my mind, not the uranium enrichment that they were talking about. The result, the consequence of that would be energy market volatility and financial risks erupting due to choking of Red Sea route and of course Strait of Hormuz. This has a direct consequence on Pakistan from both western border as well as eastern border, and we are now in the center of everything by default, not by our own doing or desire as such. Next slide. The latest development, well, this is just a graphic depiction of how I could see it, because that's how the cost of doing business will go up. I'll explain it in the next slide. Next slide. So the latest development is that while everybody wants peace, but the uncertainty and fluidity prevails. And Trump's conflicting statements and Iran's hardened stance is making it more difficult now than ever before. Uh, on the operational level, the operational reality is that there there will be planning instability for everyone, including us, as there are some permanent changes which will take place on the trade side, on the cost side, in the form of higher cost of trade, in terms of toll tax, in terms of octroi, in terms of insurance, as I said. And of course, there will be some kind of tax which will be imposed by the likely to be imposed by the Middle Eastern countries for the rebuilding after the crisis. So that taxes will also result in some kind of increase in trade cost, given the fact that all this region is the main source of income is either trade, transshipment, or tourism. The tourism is already hurt, and of course the building of the oil infrastructure and gas infrastructure will require substantial cost too. But for Pakistan, there will be more opportunities to be part of this rebuilding exercise of infrastructure, provided we'll be able to position ourselves right. And this is a great opportunity for Pakistan to make certain difficult decisions which otherwise are difficult for them to take and fix their. Anyways, the recommended approach for all of us is to assume prolonged regional volatility, strengthen our stock monitoring across exposed sectors, and particularly in the microfinance, some kind of contingency planning is necessary. Next slide. In Pakistan's context, there are two elements that we need to see. One is on the macroeconomic front, which is related to the fact that we are turned out to be the real winners in the whole equation, both diplomatically and militarily. But the biggest challenge for us now is the fact that how will this benefit or the winner streak will be translated into the benefit for the general public. While in the immediate future, I see some kind of challenges, but if we play our cards right as we've been doing on the economic front, also in the medium term, I see us doing okay, and in fact, much better. It's a huge opportunity coming our way. On the microeconomic level, however, the challenges will persist, and particularly in the short run. And these immediate challenges would be driven from oil prices increase. Rate hike is pretty much inevitable, as we've seen today. It's already gone to 106. Remittances going down. By the way, there is a fall of remittances in March. We would see more pronounced fall perhaps in April. Not much in March, but nevertheless, there is a slight decrease. Exchange rate deterioration, which is inevitable and result of the above two items that I shared with you. And obviously, the supply side constraints too, which is trade routes and the investor sentiment due to uncertainty that will prevail in the medium term. All this lead to the inflation and cost of doing business, which will obviously expose the strata that microfinance is operating in. Anyway, so the expected situation is that all this will lead to, if we assume a price hike of $85 per barrel, average price I'm talking about. And we talk about 20% reduction in remittances, again, average remittances that I'm talking about. Then the current account deficit could fall to $1 to $1.5 billion. This will result into, of course, um, uh, uh, into a tight liquidity environment, into compressed household purchasing power and fiscal stress on subsidies. G, next. Oil shocks alone could reverse the Pakistan's अगला वाला है वो ये मैंने पढ़ दिया है अगली स्लाइड could alone could alone destabilize Pakistan's hard earned stability. अगर हम $90 per barrel को assume करते हैं then CPI could hit to 11%. And resultantly Pak rupee will start depreciating and there will be a pause of the rate cut that could take place that has been happening so far. In fact, there is a risk that the rates could start going up. जी next slide. ये ऑयल के बारे में है, नेक्स्ट इज डीजल के बारे में और थर्ड जो है LNG के बारे में, तीनों को कंसोलिडेट करके मैं आपको एक ही में अपडेट कर दूंगा. नेक्स्ट स्लाइड. हाँ, now what's happening is that we seem to be doing okay as far as the supply side is concerned. The pricing risk aside, supply side seems to be okay. And how is that okay? The fact is that our local, and this is in my role as chairman of OGDC, the fact is that there was serious curtailment going on in we could produce more, but the system was not in a position to take that gas and oil because we were stuck with the agreement with Qatar for LNG. Because of the force majeure, those things are not coming through. So 50% of the deficit is met through the local curtailment which was happening by putting in the system back into the by increased production putting back into the system. So net right now, from a peak demand perspective, we are merely 20% behind as far as gas is concerned in terms of supply. We are 30% behind on diesel, and there is no gap as far as petrol is concerned. Now, the key here is the austerity drive. And if we run the austerity drive properly, for example, to meet the 20% gas requirement, we have rationalized some usage in fertilizer sector as well as in power sector. So we seem to be doing okay there. We really don't need to import an expensive shipment which has gone up 4 times via Red Sea or even from this side at this point in time. The opportunity is for us to permanently address our energy issues in the garb of the situation. Diesel 70% जो है वो हमारी refineries करती हैं. Crude हमारे पास आ रहा है, as you know. We have been able to secure good shipment from Saudi Arabia as well as from the finished petrol from UAE as well. As I said, pricing risk will still be there. Supply risk seem to be subsided. However, rationing and targeted subsidy will be the name of the game going into the future. And perhaps we need to make this into a permanent feature in our way of life, as was done by Sri Lanka and Iran. And now, by the way, the other countries are also talking about similar rationalization. The wider financial sector implications could be that we needed to be more prudent about the whole situation and prepare for the challenges which are immediately expected to be there and assume higher cost of funds, higher NPL risk, slower credit growth, and of course, working capital constraint for our customers and perhaps for MFIs also from the banks as well. And financial system will turn into a risk-averse mode, tightening the credit lifeline and Pakistan's most vulnerable, for which obviously the regulator and the government has to do something. Next slide. And who will bear the burden of this most heaviest? Unfortunately, will be the microfinance sector. As they are exposed to, typically the daily wages earners, the small farmers, women-led businesses, and informal sector workers. Next slide. Why microfinance is most exposed to this existential threat, at least ostensibly, is because of the challenges which are there across. Loan repayment stress is quite likely because of drop of income, because of customers limited resilience of income, because of limited borrower buffer, because of income volatility sensitivity, because of rural and agri-dependent areas will be hit worst, and because of this situation, perhaps MFIs and MFVs need to be better capitalized. And therefore, extra care and caution is advised not just to the MFI sector, but also to the banks who are exposed to the MFI sector. The key risk facing the microfinance sector, the two high risks are, portfolio deterioration obviously and liquidity constraint, because there will be slowdown of deposits for the banks, and the banks who are financing the MFIs may not be able to be too robust in extending the lines. And a possible mismatch could then happen, inherent mismatch could happen in the funding side of long-term and short-term funding. The cost of funding will go up, and of course the cost of doing business, given the more manual operation, by and large I'm talking about the sector, and wider digital divide will go up, and the cost of inflation, owing to the cost of inflation of course, and cost of funding will go up as well. The existential weaknesses that the crisis may amplify is on the existing structural weaknesses which are there in the system. For example, funding constraint. For MFIs and for competition with commercial banks, for MFBs to compete with the commercial bank will be a difficult task for deposit, cost-effective deposit. For MFIs to get the funding from the banks will again be a challenge. And of course, the legacy operations, the manual dependence will also be something which the sector needs to look at, and a balance need to be arrived at in this crisis situation, and introspection is necessary. The fact of the matter is that crisis does not create weaknesses. It only exposes and magnifies them. The opportunity, however, and there's good news and silver lining for the sector, is on the fact that microfinance is also act as the counter-cyclical stabilizer in the period of uncertainty, and does demonstrate strategic value. So if we play our cards right, then in this whole crisis, the microfinance sector could be a real winner too. Whether it's cash transfer facilities that government will form one way or the other, or it's a cash relief facility, credit relief facility that the government will talk about, or the regulator, the biggest beneficiary will turn out to be the microfinance sector. However, the sector need to be better prepared and position itself to take the advantage of this situation. And more importantly, they need to position themselves right with the regulator and the government. Start working on it now. Engage with the other stakeholders like the Pakistan Banks Association. So because we are bosom buddies, we are joined from the hip. If anything happens to you, this will have a trickle-down effect on the commercial banking. And we are happy to work with you to make sure that you will get the necessary relief. But certain things needed to be done by you ahead of us approaching for any opportunity that could be there coming your way. This is also on the flip side. You have to read between the lines what I'm about to say. You can actually create an opportunity out of this situation too for yourselves. Next slide is about how you can position yourself as around the 5 pillars. One is the liquidity and the risk sharing pillar, where you need to engage with the regulator at the institutional level in SACP and SBP right away to ask for first loss guarantees, blended finance, and also become a part of the refinance facility with them. I think it's about time that the sector needs to work together. You are all in this together. Do not compete at this point in time. Work in collaboration. This is what we are doing in the banking industry also. We are meeting every week. We are not meeting every week now, but we've been meeting every week, almost 3 weeks. And then we put a pause. Whenever it's necessary, we'll get together and put a joint front and work together, sharing, exchanging of notes with each other of what needed to be done. The digital acceleration needed to be done now as well. Become part of the RAST bandwagon. QR code offering could be a great opportunity. USSD connectivity is another big opportunity. And embed finance model like Kisan Card, Asan Karobar Card, ACAG are the ones that you need to explore and work with in line with the existing banks. Product diversification you must look at. If there's any emergency line is required, then please speak to SCCP and they need to speak to the Q block. I'm particularly talking about MFIs, but MFBs need to go via State Bank, of course. And there are non-traditional, products as well, which needed to be explored and worked on, which are better structured and need of the hour for the business, like solar and EV microfinancing and remittance-linked lending, for example. इसको ज़रा गरम कर दें. And then you also need to look at the target segments. For example, agri value chain will be a good target to follow. Institutional strengthening is the key, as the name of the game. Where more importantly, you need to show that you have better, risk and governance capacity. You have unified MFI platform, and banks and MFI partnership needs to be fostered. And look at more entering into and do engage with multilaterals and DFIs and look towards getting tier 1 funding as soon as possible. That is also something which will be desperately needed by the sector sooner or later. Even if those things are not too concerning for you at this point in time, the existing situation, these are the risks which we have identified in the banking industry as PBA, and we then sensitized, which Mohsin was talking about, to the finance minister and to the governor state bank at this point in time. Although it may not be required, it may be ahead of time, but it's always good that you as an industry go and sensitize your regulator and the government about the possible risk that could come your way. Critical enablers for the banks are the MFIs, and we can't deny that fact at all. And we must capitalize on it as well. Banks must take the advantage of the fact that what the relief facilities which are being offered, we will be able to work with you and figure out how we can take the advantage of that of those facilities jointly with you, and you have to do the collaboration with the banks now to be ready for it. In future, which is medium term, the scale will become the name of the game. And in the scale, again, the banks will be dependent on the sector, on the MFI sector, MF sector, to support the banks to meet their objectives. So this is the time to make strategic alliances with the banks, with the selected banks, by offering them what you can offer right now in terms of cost structure. Your cost structure needs to be optimized, and cost offering needs to be improved for the bank in collaboration to work with as a service provider. Most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, you need to work together to see how the consolidation needs to be done in the sector, because I think there is room for consolidation. There are too many MFIs, too many MFBs around. Perhaps you need to look at how you can collaborate and merge with each other. Because the scale will be the name of the game. The strength will be in your in the capital that you have. Better engagement with the regulator and the government, which I have been emphasizing, and the banks at Bread. Let me just reiterate because this is very important. So I was just, because ये इतना important है कि मुझे इसको reiterate करना चाहिए, मैं इसको दोबारा आपसे कह रहा हूँ कि better engagement with the regulator and the government and the banks is necessary at this point in time. अपना rapid portfolio review run कीजिए और वो जाके दिखाइए बैंकों को, regulator को और government को कि आप कहाँ खड़े हुए हैं in terms of your portfolio, and to the future relief if it's required, then demand that future relief also, or at least sensitize them at this point in time कि अगर situation इस तरह करके इस तरह change होती है तो फिर आपको क्या relief चाहिए होगा उसके ऊपर. That needs to be done now. If you do it, great. If you don't do it, then start doing it now. But please do it with better engagement with the government, with the regulator, and with the banks as far as MFIs are concerned. And come out with the real situation. अगर आपकी कोई vulnerabilities हैं तो show it to everybody, and अगर strengths हैं तो उनको भी दिखा दीजिए, because उसी से आपको कुछ relief अगर चाहिए होगा तो मिलेगा, otherwise शायद relief नहीं मिल पाएगा जो आपको शायद चाहिए, और it may be too late to ask for a relief if you do not act quickly about it. Within the industry also, engagement and sharing of notes is key. ये जो आज आपने move किया है आमिर, I must compliment you and Mohsin for this. Although ये मैं reason बन गया हूँ उसका, but आप लोगों को खुद एक, जिस तरह हम banking industry के अंदर PBA में कर रहे हैं, आमिर is aware of it, कि हम weekly basis पे मिल रहे थे. I think आप लोगों को भी weekly basis पे मिलना चाहिए, चाहे कोई बात भी ना हो, मगर 15 मिनट के लिए भी अगर आप मिल लेंगे तो कुछ ना कुछ उसमें से चीज़ें ऐसी निकल आएंगी कि जो फॉर एग्जांपल अखुवत कर रहा होगा, जो HBL माइक्रो फाइनेंस बैंक के बेनिफिट में हो जाएगा, जो HBL माइक्रो फाइनेंस बैंक कर रहा होगा वो शायद NRSP के फेवर में हो जाएगा. तो इस तरह की चीज़ें अगर आप अपने नोट्स एक्सचेंज करेंगे कैंडिडली, बिकॉज एट दिस पॉइंट इन टाइम कॉम्पिटिशन सेकेंडरी है, कोलैबोरेशन प्राइमरी है, तो आई थिंक वो सबको बेनिफिट करेगा एंड एवरीबडी विल बी अ विनर इन दिस इक्वेशन. अब आ जाइए जी अगली स्लाइड के ऊपर. अच्छा, रैपिड पोर्टफोलियो रिव्यू पे मैं कुछ थॉट्स आपसे दूंगा एंड देन आई विल क्लोज दिस डिस्कशन. अगली स्लाइड पे आ जाओ हमजा. जो रैपिड पोर्टफोलियो रिव्यू पे, ओके, सो
पिछली स्लाइड पे ना सर, जो आपकी पिछली स्लाइड थी उसमें सर डिस्टॉर्शन थी, तो
अच्छा मैं वापस चला जाता हूँ, वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट स्लाइड है तो मैं उस पर वापस जाता हूँ. जरा वापस जाइएगा हमजा प्लीज. The previous one. हाँ ये वाली. अच्छा देखिए, मैं यहाँ गुजारिश ये करूँगा आप सबसे, पिछली वाली हमजा, दिस वन. अच्छा ठीक है, उस पर पिछली वाली तो सुन लिया था आपने. अच्छा, इसके ऊपर तो मैंने सिर्फ इतना कहना था कि जो हमारे टिपिकल इंग्रेडिएंट्स हैं जो हमने बैंकों में यूज़ किए हैं वो शायद आपके केस में रेलेवेंट नहीं होंगे. हमने इसको डिवाइड किया कॉर्पोरेट में, SME में और कमर्शियल बैंकिंग में और अदर सेगमेंट्स में डिवाइड करके, जो टिपिकली 4-5-6 आइटम्स होते हैं, जो एफएक्स रिस्क था, जो इन्फ्लेशन था, जो पॉलिसी रिस्क रेट का हाइट था, उसको अज्यूम किया और ट्रेड को देखा कि कहाँ पर ट्रेड डिसरप्शंस हो सकती हैं, एक्सपोर्ट इंपोर्ट की, एंड ऑल्सो हमने ये देखा कि कहाँ पर जो है वो हमारे पास जो है वो कैश फ्लो इम्पैक्ट कर सकता है कंपनी का एज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ ऑल ऑफ दिस, एंड देन उसको डिफरेंट डिग्रीज़ के ऊपर रख के देख के असेस कर लिया था कि वो कहाँ आता है, और फिर उसके बाद देखा कि वो IFRS 9 के हिसाब से, आपके केस में कुछ में IFRS नहीं लग रहा होगा, कुछ में लग रहा होगा, जिनमें नहीं लग रहा, मेरे ख्याल है किसी में भी नहीं लग रहा शायद, अगर नहीं लग रहा तो फिर आपने वही जो PR की या आप SSCP की जो आपकी गाइडलाइंस है उसको फॉलो करते हुए देखना होगा कि क्या आपका पोर्टफोलियो में डिटोरेशन कितनी एक्सपेक्टेड है, किस किस्म की प्रोविजनिंग्स कुड कम योर वे इन दिस काइंड ऑफ सिचुएशन। जी नेक्स्ट स्लाइड। यू आर द बेस्ट गेस ऑफ योर बिजनेस, वी आर नॉट। हम तो डिस्टेंटली आपको देख रहे हैं, आप लोग डिसाइड करेंगे कि कौन से वो पैरामीटर्स होने चाहिए। However, for the benefit of you, we have suggested these parameters, but you are the ones who are the best judge to decide which one to choose, how to choose, and which has to be put in there. I will not get into the details of all of this, but this is only to help you, Mohsin, and the industry players to seek some kind of reference from here for running their own rapid portfolio review. Last slide. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, what lies ahead? It's better to assume that conflict may persist. It's also better to assume that demand for microfinance will increase, not decrease. It is the winners in this whole equation will be ones who have digital enablement, who are well capitalized, and who have strategic partnerships. Strategic partnerships with the government, strategic partnership with the banks, strategic partnership with the regulator. And now is the time to please work on this and start getting better engagement with everybody. Seek out, go and present to them where do you stand. As a closing thought, and we all have to drive this point home to all and sundry. In times of macro instability, microfinance is not a peripheral sector, it is a stabilizing force. And Mohsin and Amir and the rest of the sector, मैंने ये point IMF को भी बहुत emphasize किया था कि देखिए आप बहुत stringent हैं हमारे साथ मैक्रोइकोनॉमिक फ्रंट पे। जब मैंने दिसंबर में उनको प्रेजेंटेशन दी थी अबाउट किसान कार्ड एंड द एग्रीकल्चर रिलेटेड इनिशिएटिव्स ऑफ द बैंक ऑफ पंजाब, तो मैंने उनको ये कहा था कि देखिए जो माइक्रो फाइनेंस लेवल के ऊपर बेनिफिट्स हैं आप उसके ऊपर और रिलीफ अलाउ करें टू द गवर्नमेंट, अदरवाइज रिजेंटमेंट विल इंक्रीज, अदरवाइज द रियल बेनिफिशरीज ऑफ योर चेंजेस विल बी हर्ट. And this is something we need to drive this point home to everybody, Mohsin, and we all have to work together in this. जिस तरह मैंने आपसे कहा, मैंने तो ये किया ही है, मगर हम सबको एज एन इंडस्ट्री करना पड़ेगा. The question now is whether MFIs will be impacted, whether they are prepared. The question now is that, you know, are we prepared to lead under this crisis or follow? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
मेरा सर एक जो चैट बॉक्स पे कंटिन्यूसली सवाल आ रहे हैं ना,
जी जी,
that is related to some of the members are suggested from the microfinance side.
जी.
They are suggesting that given that there is this uncertainty, if we can talk to the government about giving relief in terms of this conversion from conventional to Islamic finance. So though this is not a question to you, sir, this is one thing that दो तीन लोगों ने किया, तो that's one thing that I can see. इसके अलावा
नहीं, मैं इस पे फिर भी आपको एक सजेशन दूंगा मोहसिन कि आप इसको प्लीज़ रेज ज़रूर करें, कोई हर्ज नहीं है. 100% ریز کریں. لیکن دیکھیے میری صرف گزارش آپ سے یہ ہوگی, اور میں وہی اگر آپ لوگوں نے دیکھا ہوگا میں یہ بار بار ایمفسائز کرتا ہوں, آپ تھوڑا سا نا اسٹرکچرڈ طریقے سے جائیے گا. یعنی کہ کوئی انڈسٹری کے نمبرز آپ کیا ایکسپیکٹ کر رہے ہیں, سب سے نمبر لے کے کس قسم کے چیلنجز آ رہے ہیں, وہ لے کے جائیے, اور کیس اپنا ضرور پریزنٹ کیجیے. زیادہ سے زیادہ کیا ہوگا, وہ منع کر دیں گے, یہ بھی پاسبل ہے کہ وہ نہ کریں, لیکن آئی تھنک دیر از نو ہارم ان ٹیکنگ دس میٹر اپ. میں تو آپ کو سپورٹ کروں گا کہ آپ یہ ضرور ٹیک اپ کریں, کوئی حرج نہیں ہے.
اوکے سر, اوکے ٹھیک ہے. اچھا سر, ایک سوال جو ہے نا سر, دیٹ از آئی ریڈ اٹ آؤٹ کہ پنجاب ایگریکلچر اینڈ اسمال انڈسٹریز آر ہائیلی انرجی انٹینسو. ہاؤ آر رائزنگ فیول اینڈ پاور کاسٹ افیکٹنگ نون.
ویری گڈ کویسچن. یہ کس نے پوچھا ہے سوال؟
یہ سر نازش علی ہیں سر.
اچھا نازش, میں ہائی کاسٹ ان ایگریکلچر, آپ کو یہ بتا دوں کہ آبویسلی بالکل آپ صحیح کہہ رہی ہیں, وہ خاص طور سے ڈیزل سے چلنے والے ہیں. تو یہاں پر ہو یہ رہا ہے کہ گورنمنٹ از آلریڈی ٹاکنگ اباؤٹ سبسڈائزنگ دیم, اینڈ دا سبسڈی میکینزم از بینگ ٹاکڈ اباؤٹ ایز وی اسپیک, اینڈ دے ول گیٹ سم ریلیف. سو ریسٹ ایشورڈ کہ دیکھیے میں اسی لیے بار بار یہ ایمفیسائز کر رہا ہوں کہ انگیجمنٹ بڑی ضروری ہے. جب تک کہ آپ لوگ پراپرلی انگیج نہیں ہوں گے ود ایوری بڈی, تب تک مجھے نہیں لگتا کہ آپ کو اس طرح کی ریلیف ملے گی. اس طرح میں نے آپ کو ایگریکلچر کا کہا, دا ریلیف از ویری مچ آن دا کارڈس فار دا سیکٹر, پرووائڈیڈ کہ یہ کہاں جا کے آئل پرائز بیٹھتی ہے نہیں بیٹھتی ہے کیا ہوتا ہے, بٹ وہ سیکٹر از ویری مچ پارٹ آف دا کنسیڈریشن فار دا ریلیف.
سر طاہر بھٹی صاحب فرام وی ٹی بی ایل,
جی جی
سوال ہے.
جی جی.
سو میں آئی ریکویسٹ دا آرگنائزرز اگر وہ ان کو میوٹ کو ان میوٹ کر دیں پلیز. خاور صاحب
کر دیا ان میوٹ.
جی
جی بھٹی صاحب کیا حال ہے؟ کیا ہوا؟
میوٹ کر دیا ہوا ہے, but in the meantime, Zafar صاحب, perhaps another question. عامر خان بول رہے ہیں.
Sorry, ایک میں کمپلیٹ کر لوں اس کو عامر, if you don't mind.
جی جی پلیز go ahead.
نہیں میں وہی بات کر رہا تھا کہ there was a little disruption within the presentation کافی ہوئی ہے, تو I would like کہ یہ اس کی the copy should be made available to the participants, کیونکہ یہ بہت ہی اس کے ظاہر ہے کہ it's multi dimensional اور بہت سارے اس میں چیزیں ہیں کہ they can definitely work on that, اور وہ بعد میں وہ کر سکتے ہیں. another bit کہ جی ایگریکلچر کی آپ نے بات کی, ایگریکلچر از another threat کہ جو فرٹیلائزر جو نظر فورسی کر رہے ہیں آپ, issue of the shortage and the gas کی
یہ ہمارے اینڈ سے ان کے اینڈ
سے پروڈکٹیوٹی ڈائریکٹلی افیکٹڈ, وہ بھی کیا لے
پھر ڈسکنیکٹ ہو گیا. وہ کہہ رہے 100 سے اوپر ہو گئے. ہاں وہ ریکارڈنگ ہو رہی ہے. تو میں کیا کروں, ریکارڈ بند کر کے دیکھوں؟ اب تو ہے ہی نہیں کنیکٹڈ. خبر ابھی تو کنیکٹڈ ہی نہیں ہے. اب آ رہا
Recording in progress.
سوری عامر میں ڈسکنیکٹ کر گیا تھا. میں ایسا کرتا ہوں میں اپنی ویڈیو بند کر لیتا ہوں, شاید اس سے کچھ بہتری آ جائے, اگر آپ اجازت دے تو.
بالکل سر.
اچھا یہ میں نے بھٹی صاحب کی بات سن لی تھی. بھٹی صاحب کی بات از ویری ویلڈ کہ فرٹیلائزر کا شارٹ فال آئے گا اگر وہ گیس کو ہم کرٹیلمنٹ رکھتے ہیں انٹل اینڈ آف اپریل. انٹل اینڈ آف اپریل یس. ابھی تک تو گورنمنٹ نے وہ پلان کیا ہوا ہے, مگر یہ درست فرما رہے ہیں. ہوپ فلی تب تک کوئی نہ کوئی ریزولوشن نکل ہی آئے گا کہ کس طرح ہم نے مینیج کرنا ہے. اور اگر گیس کی اوور آل ریشننگ ہم بہتر کر لیتے ہیں تو پھر ہم ریلیف دے پائیں گے ٹو دا, یعنی فار ایگزامپل ایل پی جی جو امیڈیٹلی ریزالو نہیں ہوگا پرابلم, بٹ یہ آہستہ آہستہ کچھ نہ کچھ ہو جائے گا ان دا ڈیو کورس آف ٹائم. دا پوائنٹ از دیٹ وی ہیو اے ہیوج اپرچونیٹی ایٹ ہینڈ ٹو فکس آر اسٹرکچرل ایشوز. جی عامر.
Thank you, Zafar. I think وہ طاہر صاحب نے was ruling the point and I agree with him on that part کہ جی جو آپ نے بھی reiterate کیا ہے, availability of fertilizers, availability of fuel is a critical thing to ensure the markets keep running. ایک اور چیز جو ہم نے کووڈ سے سیکھی تھی was کہ stopping of credit leads to a bigger headache. So we need to ensure that we manage the credit cycles accordingly. Everyone has a knee-jerk reaction can obviously stop lending and we should not be even thinking of that. We may reduce it, we may fine-tune it, but at no point in time should we zero it in the market. And I think that's the bigger challenge as bankers. We need to understand that we all work together in this market and one action by one or two can impact the market in such a sensitive time.
بالکل درست کہہ رہے ہیں عامر آپ, اور اس لیے میں آئی مسٹ کمپلیمنٹ یو. اینڈ میرا خیال ہے یہ پہلی دفعہ آپ لوگوں نے اس طرح کی کوئی چیز آرگنائز کی ہے, ایٹ لیسٹ آئی ایم ناٹ اویئر آف اٹ ان دا پاسٹ. آپ نے بہت اچھا کیا یہ انگیجمنٹ شروع کی ہے, بیکاز اس سے بائی ڈیفالٹ آپ کی انگیجمنٹ بینکوں کے ساتھ بھی ہو گئی ہے. اب دیکھیے بھٹی صاحب بھی یہاں تھے, میں دیکھ رہا تھا ابھی ریحان شیخ صاحب بھی مجھے نظر آئے تھے, رضوان عطا صاحب ہیں, تو بینکرز بھی یہاں موجود ہیں. یہ جو میسج ہے نا یہ جانا بڑا ضروری ہے. مگر میرا خیال یہ عامر کہ آپ لوگوں کو نا اور کنسٹرکٹیو وے میں تھوڑا انگیج ہونے کی ضرورت ہے ود دا ریگولیٹر, ود ایک پریزنٹیشن بنا کے, جس طرح ہم لوگ گئے تھے اس طرح آپ لوگوں کو پریزنٹیشن بنا کے بینکوں کے پاس بھی, آپ پی بی اے کے پاس آ جائیے گا, ویل پٹ ایوری بڈی ٹوگیدر دیر. اور آپ گورنمنٹ اسٹیٹ بینک کے پاس بھی جائیے, اس کے پاس بھی جائیے, ایس سی پی کے پاس, اور ان کے, اور اگر جہاں آپ کو میری ضرورت پڑے گی ایز پی بی اے چیئرمین تو میں بھی آپ کے ساتھ چلوں گا, فائنانس منسٹر کے پاس بھی, ریگولیٹر کے پاس بھی, بیکاز ہم اور آپ ایز اے سیٹ وی آر بزم بڈیز ان دس. عامر کچھ آپ کو ہوگا اس کا ڈومینو افیکٹ ہمارے پہ بھی آئے گا. یہ نہیں ہو سکتا کہ بینکس بچ جائیں گے اور مائکرو فائنانس ڈوب جائے گا. اگر ہمارا ڈائریکٹ ایکسپوجر آپ پہ نہیں بھی ہوگا نا عامر, تو تب بھی جو سینٹیمنٹ نیگیٹو مارکیٹ میں جائے گا نا وہ بہت ہی ہارمفل ہوگا فار دا انٹائر سیکٹر.
I agree, Zafar Saab, totally agree. And we will certainly take up on this opportunity. ہمیں سی سی بی سے انگیجمنٹ ہے, ہمارے اسٹیٹ بینک سے بھی انگیجمنٹ ہے, but I think given آج صبح کی جو ڈونلڈ ٹرمپ کی ہے کہ بھی another 2 to 3 weeks at minimum means کہ this war will drag on for at least the month of April even to May. And then اس کے بعد جو بھی اگر rebound آتا ہے will be a drag of another 3 to 4 months for sure. So
عامر میں تو یہ کہتا ہوں, خیر وہ ٹرمپ کی تو بات کا کچھ پتہ نہیں ہوتا, ٹرمپ کی میں نے کہا کچھ بات کا کچھ نہیں پتہ ہوتا, وہ کچھ کہتا ہے صبح شام میں کچھ کہتا ہے, مگر یہ ہے کہ مجھے ٹیشو لا کے دو, وہ صبح کچھ کہتا ہے شام میں کچھ کہتا ہے, بٹ دا فیکٹ آف دا میٹر از کہ ہمیں پریپیئر ہونا چاہیے کہ یہ لمبا چلے گا. ہمارے اپنے بینیفٹ میں یہ ہے کہ ہم یہ ازیوم کریں یہ لمبا چلے گا. پرابلم یہاں آ گیا عامر کہ جو پارٹی کا اپر ہینڈ ہے وہ ختم کرنا چاہتی ہے, جو پارٹی کا اپر ہینڈ سپوزڈلی نہیں ہے اس نے بڑی ہارڈنڈ پوزیشن لے لی ہے فار ٹیکنگ کنسیشنز. اینڈ دس از ویئر دا ریئل پرابلم از کہ وہ کب بیک ڈاؤن کرتا ہے اور کب گیون کرتا ہے. دیٹ از دا پرابلم دیٹ یو نو مجھے انسرٹینٹی کو اور زیادہ آپ کو ایگزیبٹ کر دیتا ہے. جی
تھینک یو سر. جی عامر صاحب, اوور ٹو یو سر ٹو کلوز دس ویبینار.
Thank you, Zafar Saab. Thank you for a very informative presentation. Very well researched, very well presented, sir. So thank you for that. to understand is stemming from yours, and I'm sure everyone does understand, situation is uncertain, but we're feeling the impact of it. And we are now going into the second month of the war, and it's really trending in terms of the impact. And the critical part, the uncertainty around it, is a risk itself that we need to manage around it. You rightly pointed out who bears the burden. Well, our clients are the biggest impacted through that. And critical part of the understanding is the Jammu disposable income impact of that. It gives on impact onto obviously the ability to pay back the loans and so on and so forth. So it's a knockdown impact onto us. For us, for the near-term priorities for the sector are 5 that we want to highlight. Liquidity. And we need to ensure commercial banks, regulators, everyone understands if there's no liquidity, then we have a very big problem. We need to ensure that we are. Second part, operational continuity. We need to ensure that we are there for our clients when our clients need them, and at any time we need to remain open. Obviously, it's going to be costing us in terms of higher cost of operations, but that's a price to pay to ensure that we remain thick with our customers. One component, Zafar Sahab, जो PBA level पे भी उठा तो इधर भी है, is the impact of IT and cyber security. We need to ensure that that is also, we as organizations are immune from it as much as possible. For the sector, certainly feeling the impact of it. Critical as bankers, we understand the clients that we have, we need to remain close to them. So any opportunity that we get, we need to be ensuring that they understand our pain, but at the same time, we do understand their pains that they're going through. Critical, as I mentioned, the first point as well is domestic funding resilience. Lines should be ensured here, whether it's government lines, commercial bank lines, or lines within, they need to be operative at all levels. We are doing what the industry is doing in terms of ensuring that we remain operable, we remain committed. We are feeling obviously the pressure of the markets around us, but we need to ensure that we remain together. And that is a commitment that we have at the payment level, sir, KG, be it SCCP, be it the regulator. We need to remain talking to each other. They need to understand what challenges we're facing, and we're doing that at multiple levels. We thank you for your time. We thank you for the presentation that will be given to us. And I think perhaps at your level, at my level as well, we could interact more often, number one. Number two, also pass on the information, and perhaps we could invite you again in a month's time. Hopefully by then, this crisis would have been over, and we could talk about more positives that we can do in the microfinance sector on the collective level to take it forward. But once again, thank you for your time, and thank you for your webinar. This webinar.
My pleasure entirely.
Thank you to all the parties.
Thank you very much, everyone. Zafar Sahab, Amir Sahab, thank you so much. Thank you.
शुक्रिया जी, खुदा हाफिज़.
Okay.